You're tuned in to the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Hello, Bear Down Believers, and welcome into the show. I'm your host, Matt Reynoldson, and we are single-digit days away from kickoff of the 2024 Arizona football season. The excitement is building. We'll talk about that today on the show. We'll count down our top 10 risers of fall camp. That's guys who either didn't play a significant role last year in the program, are new transfers in, or even a couple freshmen. We'll count down the top 10 of those from what I saw in fall camp coming up on the show. We'll also hear from head coach Brent Brennan on injury recovery, one of his position groups that he thinks was on the rise throughout fall camp, and just his overall thoughts just a week and a half out from game time. And I'll run through my week 0 picks as well, as we've got college football this weekend on the slate, including Arizona's next opponent, New Mexico. Before we get to all that, I want to remind you to please subscribe to the show on Bleav in Arizona. That's Bleav in Arizona on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. And the video versions of these will always be up on my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldson. Please hit the play button on all of those audio versions whenever you see them. That certainly helps out the show and helps us to continue to bring you great content around the Arizona Wildcats. All right, without further ado, it's time to count down my top 10 risers of fall camp this year. Once again, that's either newcomers to the program or guys that didn't play a huge role last year. And that list starts with number 10, Cole Tannenbaum. We have a backup quarterback in Tucson, the 6'4", former walk-on gray shirt quarterback from Los Angeles, California. Tannenbaum, the 6'4" prospect behind Noah Fifita, is a very different build in that backup quarterback spot. Really looks very similar to Braden Dorman and a lot of the things he does, the throwing motion and everything like that. If you remember, Dorman was Fifita's backup quarterback last year once Jaden DeLora went down. But Dorman really had an inside track on the backup quarterback job, but Tannenbaum just came in and took it. It was command of the offense. It was touch on his throws. It was being able to hit the deep shots over the seam, being able to do a lot of things. Now, no quarterback not named Noah Fifita had a perfect fall camp. It took a while for Tannenbaum to grab hold of the job. But what he did in those team periods, what he did giving his receivers a chance to win in one-on-ones, some of those wow throws that you saw, Tannenbaum separated himself as the backup quarterback. And I think that's important that you have that clear-cut 2 and 3 coming out of fall camp. Cole Tannenbaum, the former walk-on, great story there. Certainly doesn't look like a walk-on. Looks like a D1 quarterback, and he'll play potentially a role as a D1 quarterback this year, sitting behind Noah Fifita, the starting quarterback and a contender for the Heisman and the Big 12 Player of the Year. So Cole Tannenbaum, the backup quarterback, is my first riser of fall camp at number 10. Number 9, we're going to go in the inside linebacker room, and a great comeback story from somebody who's been in the program for a couple years. Linebacker Leviticus Sua has worked his way into the rotation at that off-ball inside linebacker position, and that's something that's very important for Arizona, to have depth behind Jacob Manu and Tay Brown, who look to be the presumptive starters. Now, Kamuela Kayahue could have been one of those guys that was on this risers list, had a very impressive fall camp all the way through, but an ankle injury knocked him out for about a week and a half, so I can't in good conscience put him as one of the risers just because he didn't see the entirety of fall camp. But Kayahue is going to play a big role this year. Sua could play a very big role. He was on one of those guys that was maybe on transfer watch before camp, maybe even coming out of spring. And he worked hard to get his body right, to be one of those guys that could play an impact performance level in this defensive room. I think Sua is going to play a big role this year, not only on special teams like he has in past years, but also in that inside linebacker room. I see Arizona starting to rotate that off-ball position maybe a little bit more. Obviously, you can't take Jacob Manu off the field wearing the green dot, the communication helmet, and just being the important, dominant player he is. But building depth in that inside linebacker room was a priority for Arizona going into fall camp. Tay Brown is the starter there next to Jacob Manu, but Kayahue and Sua will play a lot for Arizona. So I have Leviticus Sua, the linebacker, at number 9 of my top risers of fall camp. Number 8, let's move to the defensive line room, and I saw a lot from Isaiah Johnson this fall. I think the interior defensive line is somewhere where Arizona may have a lot of question marks, even with those two strong inside linebackers coming in to fill gaps. But Arizona's got to both eat space, got to find the challenge, find the balance of eating space while also getting upfield. They only have one space eater in that entire defensive line room, and that's Chuba Mai, the transfer from UC Davis, weighing in at 349 pounds. Isaiah Johnson, though, provides a different ability to kind of get up into the chops of a center, get up into the A-gap between the center and guard, be a disruptor in the run game, be a disruptor in the pass game. And I think he fits a lot of the mold of what new defensive line coach Jose Umalu wants to employ within this defensive line room and some of the attacking mentality. He showed that a lot throughout fall camp. And while the ends like Tai Uyunglele and some of the other guys turned heads maybe more in this 4-3-5 system, they need some guys at defensive tackle, and Isaiah Johnson could be one of those impact players at D tackle next to a Chuba Mai. I think Isaiah Johnson is my number 8 overall riser of fall camp, and a very important position that has a lot of question marks in the Arizona defensive line room. All right, number 7 is one of my favorites on this list, and that's Caden Luke, the freshman running back from Oro Valley, the CDO superstar that won a state championship for the Dorados last year. No, he's not going to be a factor in this running back rotation. That's not on the radar right now. Arizona's 3 transfer running backs in Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt, Quali Conley, and Kendrick Riscano seem to have that locked down, as well as Brayshawn Speedy Luke. But Caden Luke is going to play a major role in this offense because Dino Babers, the offensive coordinator, is using him as a fullback. And boy, does he look good back there. I watched him from field level, from me to the camera, you to me right here, truck defenders all around the state of Arizona last year. I mean, this kid was a bulldozer at running back, and he's a hard worker. He's a guy that was always going to come in, walk on from CDO, was always going to come in and do his part to play a role. And lo and behold, they were looking for more heavy sets under Babers, and Babers saw it in the 6 foot, 235 pounder Caden Luke. I mean, the kid is an impressive specimen. He's a guy that's going to make you feel it when he hits you in the hole. And oh yeah, he was a running back just a few months ago, so he has the athleticism to leak out, play one of those heavier set tight end roles sometimes. Not necessarily a true tight end because Arizona has better bodies there, but more of like your H-back type of player, your flex fullback player, your guy that can leak out into the flat and catch the ball. And I think he did that in goal line situations throughout fall camp. We saw it several times in goal line drills as the Arizona offense and defense were kind of duking it out at that level. And Caden Luke finding the end zone multiple times. I think he's going to play a big role in the heavier sets for Arizona, whether it's 22 personnel, whether it's 12, or whether it's 21 personnel. Dino Babers will mix it up with these heavy sets. And Caden Luke, the freshman fullback from Canyon del Oro, will play a big part of that. Number 6, I've got Owen Goss, the safety transfer from Colgate. He's had an impressive fall camp, and it's a loaded defensive back room, so it's very hard to really get a handle on exactly, what we're going to see as far as the rotation in this defensive back room. Look, Arizona brought back 5 guys that it considers starters in Tacario Davis, Traden Stukes, Dalton Johnson, Gunnar Maldonado, and Genesis Smith. All 5 of those guys fill a different role on this defense, but Goss can play a lot of different roles. Now, Arizona has sets where it brings out 6 defensive backs. They call it the dollar package, and Goss could be a key player in that dollar package in being a guy that can slide down, cover tight ends, be physical, come up in run support, have exceptional coverage skills. I mean, this is a guy who's played a lot of college football. Grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and wanted one more shot transferring from Colgate. Arizona was that shot, and Arizona gave him an opportunity to come in and compete, and he has competed all fall camp. He's an impressive physical specimen, but more than that, he has good feet, really good feet, backpedals effectively, closes hard on receivers. Owen Goss has been one of the stories of fall camp in my mind, and that's why he comes in at number 6 of my top 10 risers of Arizona fall camp. Moving now to the top 5, my top 5 risers of Arizona fall camp, and it starts with the presumptive left tackle. And not even presumptive anymore. He's number 1 on the depth chart, and I'm not sure there's really anybody competing for it behind him. Rhino Tapa'atotai has emerged as a redshirt freshman for the left tackle position for Arizona. And that's important because he grabbed a hold of that job early in camp, stayed healthy all the way throughout camp, and really continued to improve. For the young guys on the offensive line especially, it's about reps. And Brent Brennan said yesterday that he feels that this team and this offensive line has been able to gel because of the reps in fall camp, because of the depth that it's built, and just seeing different looks with this 4-2-5 defense, seeing different looks with this defensive line. Well, nobody's seen more of that than a left tackle. And Arizona, for all its questions on the defensive line, has a couple pretty solid edge rushers and a couple pretty solid edge rushers at linebacker too when you bring Justin Flo into this. And all of those guys will be attacking the left tackle in most sets. Well, Tai and Trey Smith and Justin Flo and Sterling Lane have not really been able to get that much outside leverage-wise on Rhino. Rhino's been rock solid there. He has good feet. He's still learning. He's still progressing and developing, but he has good feet at that left tackle position, and he'll only continue to grow. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman from Utah, came in last year, learned the system, learned from guys like Jordan Morgan, who ended up being a first-round draft pick to the NFL's Green Bay Packers. And now Rhino's ready for his spot. He's ready for his shot. And he's not the better of the two tackles. That's obviously Jonah Savanaya, who's at right tackle, perhaps Arizona's third best pro prospect on the entire team. But Rhino's got to hold down the left side. Rhino's got to hold down the blind side for Noah Fafita. And while Fafita has incredible pocket presence, Rhino's got to do his job on the left side. That goes with run blocking. That goes with pass blocking. And so far in fall camp, he's been a consistent performer. He'll only continue to get better throughout the season. We'll see how he fares against live bullets, live competition when New Mexico and NAU come to town in the first 2 weeks. But I'd put my money on Rhino being ready to roll against a good Kansas State pass rush come week 3. My number 4 riser of fall camp, tight end Kean Burnett. And hello, it's the breakout season for Kean Burnett, one of the Juice County boys, went to Servite High School with Fafita, Teteroa McMillan, and Jacob Manu, part of that incredible recruiting class there that may have changed the Arizona football program for the long term. Kean Burnett is ready to break out this year. He has been, without a doubt, Arizona's best tight end in fall camp. He's a monstrous receiver. He's a guy that's going to be a true red zone threat. He's been consistent all the way through. And the depth that Arizona has built in this tight end room is very strong, but Kean Burnett stands out above all. And we kind of saw it during spring. We saw glimpses of it. We saw him start to separate, start to be that guy in the passing game. I mean, this is a guy that has created an ability to separate at the next level, the ability to high point balls over these incredible defensive backs. And Kean Burnett's going to be a major part of this offense. I see potentially 30, 35 catches, maybe a 500-yard receiver at tight end, a few touchdowns here and there. He's going to be a red zone target. He is going to go up the seam for this team. All right, it's time for the top 3, and I mentioned the interior of the Arizona defensive line with Isaiah Johnson. How about the outside guys? Trey Smith, I've talked about him all fall camp, and we've talked about him being one of the most important additions to this Arizona defensive line room. Smith is a former All-Mountain West Conference player, transfer in from San Jose State, and boy, has he made an impact all the way through. Has the body of a true defensive end. He's shifty. He can move inside, move outside, can confuse tackles, is a creative rusher, is strong setting the edge in the run game. Smith is a very, very strong defensive end for this group. And I think that we've seen glimpses throughout fall camp of what he can be against Big 12 competition. Yeah, he transferred to follow his head coach, Brent Brennan, here to Arizona. But he also transferred for an opportunity to play against very big-time competition. And this is a guy that seems ready for the limelight, ready for the spotlight. He's a good physical build, looks to be strong. He's a lean player, gets off the edge, and really does have the look of a strong Big 12 defensive end. I see him creating some havoc in the backfield, being more of a run stopper maybe than a pass stopper. But, we'll see if he gets off the edge in the pass game, because he's done it all fall camp. So now it just comes to translating it into the games. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see at least 1 or 2 sacks for Trey Smith against New Mexico. That's how high I am on the man wearing number 3 on Arizona's defense. Number 2, croskey-merritt, the running back transfer from New Mexico. And we said the guy that they call Bill would emerge as the top running back in fall camp after we all got the admissions issue figured out. And gosh, it was a crazy story to follow from our standpoint as media. But he committed to Arizona, then committed to Ole Miss, then the admissions issue, then came back to Arizona. So long story short, he wasn't here for the spring. So we didn't know what Arizona would have in the running back room. Well, lo and behold, number 1 comes in, and number 1 becomes the number 1 running back. croskey-merritt is going to be an absolute stud. One of the returning FBS leaders in touchdowns scored last year, was definitely an all-Mountain West caliber player at New Mexico. And him and Quali Conley, the transfer from San Jose State, are 2 guys that have fit seamlessly into Power 4 football. I mean, they are guys that know how to explode off the ball. They're good pass blockers. They're good receivers out of the backfield. They're guys that can get between the tackles. There are guys that can bounce off tackle. We've seen a number of electric runs from these 2 guys, but perhaps no more than croskey-merritt. Arizona had their number 1 running back emerge just through fall camp, just being here through fall camp. And that's why croskey-merritt, without a doubt, is my number 2 riser of Arizona fall camp. And drum roll for number 1. We've been talking about him since week 2. Wide receiver Jeremiah Patterson, who has really emerged as Arizona's number 2 wide receiver on the team, it looks like. I think he's eclipsed Montana Lamonius Craig based on what he's done in fall camp. And he will be Arizona's starting slot. He is mentioned by coaches at every turn. He's mentioned by Fafita, by other guys of what he has done. And you see him winning one-on-one reps. You see him standing out in team. You see Fafita just throwing out a ball and saying, "Go get it, Jeremiah Patterson." The JUCO transfer from the College of San Mateo in the Bay Area was a non-story coming into fall camp. And now he may be one of Arizona's most important players on offense. And look at that. He wears number 2. So seems to be fitting in pretty well for the guy he replaced, Jacob Cowing, who set all sorts of Arizona records last year and a couple FBS records as well. But now Jeremiah Patterson will step into those big shoes, and it certainly looks, by the way he performed from fall camp, that he'll be able to fill those shoes pretty well. All right, here's what Brent Brennan had to say about the offense overall, but also the growth in the passing game that Arizona has seen since spring ball. And he mentioned a lot of wide receivers that are going to see time this year, including Patterson.
Well, I think that's a good thing, right? Because they're definitely getting challenged every day by excellent players and excellent coaching on the back end with Coach Aquina and Coach Viney and Coach Arce. So I love that part of it for us. And I think we're in a good spot. I think we've seen one of the things I know I said to y'all, trying to figure out after that first group of receivers, who's that next group that's elevating. And there's been a lot of really good stuff there. Rex Haynes has done a great job. Devin Hyatt, Chris Hunter, really, really excited about that. I think we saw a lot from Malachi in the spring, and obviously Montana. But Jeremiah Patterson's the new addition from CSM. He's an exciting. So there's good things happening in that room. I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah, I've really seen that growth in the passing game as well. And I think that's a credit to Dino Babers' concepts as offensive coordinator. But also, when you have a returning quarterback the caliber of Noah Fafita, it'll make every receiver better. We've seen the backup quarterbacks get better because of that too, and start to put balls on guys where they can go make a play. I mean, he mentioned Rex Haynes, Chris Hunter, Patterson, AJ Jones. Just go down the line. And that's not even to mention that you have perhaps the best wide receiver in the country wearing number 4 in T-Mac. So this wide receiver room, this passing game has continued to grow. And I say the passing game overall, because we've not only seen this wide receiver room figure out a way to go 6 deep, but we've also seen 3 tight ends emerge in Kean Burnett, Roberto Miranda, and Tyler Powell. We've seen 4 running backs that can catch the ball effectively out of the backfield, and that may be underselling it because Kroski-Merritt, Conley, Riscano, and especially Rayshon Speedy Luke can catch the ball out of the backfield and be a threat in the passing game. So Arizona has this coordinated passing attack, whether they go out of heavy sets, whether they split out 4 wide and just gun them up the seams, they can hurt teams in the passing game. And I think that's been really impressive. But of course, it all comes down to, with the passing game, especially the third down passing game, how your own line protection holds up. Look, injury-wise, everything like that, Arizona has not held up that well in fall camp. The good news is that none of those injuries on the offensive line appear to be long-term. Michael Wooten may be the only one, and he hasn't necessarily, he wasn't factoring in the equation this year. Grayson Stovall has seen a lot of good reps at backup center and backup guard, but Josh Baker is your starting center. Your left guard is Wendell Moe. He's a returning all-conference player, all Pac-12 player. He got healthy the final week of the season, or the final week of fall camp. Feels like Moe will be out there. Your right guard is a more interesting situation because Leif Magnuson missed team periods for almost all of fall camp, and Ryan Stewart appears to emerge as a starting guard there. So there's more depth being built at guard. Now there's no depth at tackle. I don't think I'm overstating that. Arizona's repping freshmen and walk-ons, Matthew Lotto and Zarius Wells. They're repping those guys at backup tackle. So there's no depth at that spot. But you have guys at other positions that can slide out and play tackle. So maybe not quite as much of a sound the alarm bells emergency as some might say. But the good news, and the really good news, and I don't think he was blowing smoke, Brent Brennan feels good about this offensive line.
I think that's going to be a really strong group for us. I think we have great leadership up there with Josh Baker and Big Jonah. I'm excited about that. I think Grayson has made some moves, is the number 2 center in training camp that we're excited about. Rhino's coming along nicely. Wowo's a good player. I think we're excited about where that's at. Now, we got to play. It's so easy to say, oh, it looked great in practice, and or whatever. So I think we're in a good spot. I do think we're, the competition with our defense has been physical and violent, and I think that's a good thing in terms of getting ready to play.
All right, one more quote I want to get to before we wrap up with the football discussion here is Brent Brennan talking a little bit about Arizona handling the injuries, handling the nicks and bruises of fall camp. Recovery is so important this time of year, especially because this is the most wide open your schedule is going to be. The guys don't have class yet. They don't have these tight schedules that you're going to have during the regular season, and they have to learn how to recover their bodies. Here's what Brennan had to say about players attacking that recovery throughout camp.
I think they've been really good that way. I think Coach Carroll and his staff and Paul and our training room staff do a great job of just like the constant recovery, the reminders, the being on it. I think our coaching staff is really supportive of that part of it also. I think we do a good job of structuring practice that way, structuring the day that way so that recovery is a significant component of that. I love the cold tubs we have out by the practice field. Like, what a genius, whoever thought of that. That's one of the smartest things I've ever seen. My last gig, before we built the new facility, we had like the big horse feed troughs, or the baby pools. That was a pre-new building at San Jose. But so I think we're really in tune with that, and I think it's because we're starting school so late, we're still kind of in we broke camp, but we're still doing some camp stuff because we're not, so it's just kind of, you're sort of guys are beat up, that's all, so we got 10 days to get right and get healthy and get fresh, and we're going to do a great job of that also.
It's really not a habit. Is that going to make it easier when guys have, okay, I got class to get to, I got 20 minutes to be in the cold tub or whatnot, just fitting it into that tighter schedule?
Yeah, absolutely, and trying to make sure that they understand the importance of it, but at the end of the day, it's also the decision of a young man to make those choices about recovery when he's not here, right? That's, at the end of the day, they have to choose to go to sleep and not play video games till 3 a.m. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
So Arizona's ready to turn that page to game week starts off here right now. Arizona's already in game preps for New Mexico. But the interesting thing about this New Mexico matchup is the Lobos will already have a game under their belts before they come to Arizona Stadium. And Dino Babers said it earlier this week. Danny Gonzalez said it last week. It's dangerous when a team has a game before they play you and you don't have a game, because teams make their most improvements from game 1 to game 2. So we'll see how much improvement New Mexico makes following this weekend's game against Montana State. But that rolls into my week 0 picks. That's right. We have college football this weekend, and I'll pick a couple of games. The first one is Florida State and Georgia Tech, the headliner over in Dublin, Ireland. And then, of course, New Mexico and Montana State in FCS Power. We'll start off with Florida State and Georgia Tech. And Florida State has really one of the storylines in the country this year. Oregon State transfer quarterback and former Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei is under center now for Florida State. Obviously, FSU coming into an offseason after they were snubbed for the college football playoff last year after going undefeated. A big part of that was quarterback Jordan Travis got hurt. And so undefeated Florida State left out. One loss, Alabama sliding into that. It gave us a couple of incredible semifinals, but FSU has had to stew on that all offseason and now heads against Georgia Tech and a team that plays strong for its head coach, Brent Brennan. Middling ACC program, nothing that should really be a shock to the system for a team like Florida State, but weird things happen over there in Dublin. And as a Nebraska grad, I have personally seen over there in Ireland, in that stadium, Scott Frost choose to kick an onside kick up 11 points in the third quarter after scoring a touchdown. Northwestern came back to beat Nebraska because of that decision. So all that to say, weird things happen over in Dublin. Florida State could be in line for one of those weird things to happen with a Georgia Tech team that pulled off some upsets last year, including an infamous upset of Miami that included one of the worst clock management decisions I have ever seen in my life. Mario Cristobal, got to get past that. But Georgia Tech could give Florida State a very interesting game, but in the end analysis, this is still a top 10 Florida State team. So give me let's call it an uncomfortable 17-point win for Florida State. I think that defense is really good, so we'll call it 37-20 FSU in Dublin. And let me know in the comments if you have a different score prediction for that game. The one that involves Arizona, kind of, in a tertiary way. New Mexico hosting Montana State. And Montana State is actually more than a touchdown favorite in this game. New Mexico welcoming in a new coaching staff with Bronco Mendenhall coming in to the program. And this is a tough spot for New Mexico. New coaching staff, you don't know what to expect, and a team that, has been a perennial power in FCS football. I think Montana State's going to win this. I think New Mexico will show some things on tape that will prove that they can win a game like this. So give me a tight one. Give me a 30-24 win for Montana State. I think New Mexico comes into Arizona Stadium 0-1. Just too much to replace. Too many question marks for New Mexico to beat an FCS powerhouse in week 0 of the season. So there are my week 0 projections. Now it's time for the Bear Down Rundown. We close every show with telling you what else you need to know in Arizona athletics. And this week, it's the Red Blue Showcase for Arizona men's basketball times 2. Arizona will have consecutive Saturday nights where they have the Red Blue Showcase, or consecutive weeks, I guess I should say, where they have the Red Blue Showcase. One will be at McHale Center, and the second will be up in the Valley, in the Phoenix area, Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, just across from State Farm Stadium where the Cardinals play. Arizona will have another Red Blue Showcase the week after their one at McHale. So it should be really interesting to see an Arizona men's basketball team with a lot of hype around it have 2 of these showcases. And I know there's a huge alumni base up in the Valley. It's what Arizona considers its biggest alumni base in the country. So a lot of those people being able to come and see their Arizona basketball program and, bring in a little more, funding for the program, whether that's NIL, whether that's other things, Arizona is really getting its footprint out there. And this will be really exciting to see what this Wildcats team can bring that early in camp, that early in the, sort of exhibition season before things get into the preseason games and everything like that. But with 3 transfers in, with Caleb Love back, with guys like Mo Krivas, KJ Lewis, Jaden Bradley back, this team has a really high ceiling. And we're going to see it early on in October. So the first one at McHale Center, and then a week later at Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale. It should be really exciting to see those 2 red-blue showcases for Arizona men's basketball. That'll do it for this edition of the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Once again, I'm Matt Reynoldson. Thank you so much for joining us. And please remember to like and subscribe to the show, Bleav in Arizona, BLEAV in Arizona, over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out the YouTube versions on my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldson. I'll have a recap of New Mexico's game against Montana State on Saturday, and we check in on one of Arizona's rookies in the NFL coming up later this week. Until then, I'm Matt Reynoldson. Have a great one.